This is Progress Culture.
As the drones get developed, you're not going to need pilots.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
So that will become a non-existent job.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I went to a meeting, it was years ago. I think I was active duty at the time, and it was at the Pentagon, and they were talking about how in 2040 they're going to look at trying to come to a pilotless Navy, and I laughed. And the Admiral was like, "Commander Jordan, what's so funny?" And I was like, that's hilarious. I think you'll always have pilots. And he said, well, in 1900, if you said there were no horses in the Army by 1945, and I was like, oh, interesting.
Well, I mean, but this is something though that I think about too, because like I think it's what I'm trying to tap on by saying, do you think these things are going to disappear? The thing that I do know is that people are mostly motivated and have to be. The situation that we are living in, the way that civilization is set up, is you have to earn the money in order to function. So if the thing that you are expecting to do that earns you a living no longer earns you a living, it's more and more likely that you will be unable to engage in that activity and therefore will go away. So if you have a situation where you have unmanned aircraft, it's right there, it says in it, unmanned aircraft, we don't need you. You're not going to need somebody to be able to be a pilot. So then will that skill go away?
I think it will at some point. And even now, airline pilots are more systems operators than pilots, because I talked to a lot of these kids now that are coming out of flight school. They can't do navigation, they can't do point to points, that we learned, in flight school. And when an autopilot goes down, they're like, well, it's broken, we're not flying. I'm like, don't you have wings?
Yeah, right.
But they're not. They're taught differently. So yeah, I think those jobs will go away and we'll have to do other things. I mean, think about, in the railroad industry, there was a telegraph operator, that led all the trains, let towns know when the train's coming, and they went away. And there was a huge deal. And I think it was in the early 1900s when the last one went away, because they were like, what are we going to do now? Yeah. We have these skills. We know Morse code. What can we do? And they had to do other things. They got this new thing called radio that's coming out. You guys will take jobs doing that. And they were like, I don't know anything about this radio stuff.
Yeah, right.
But that's what they did. They kind of moved on and did other things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's the silver lining is I mean, as long as I've known Paul, and that's not even a long time. You have told me that a long time ago, you made a decision to pursue the knowledge for knowledge's sake and the art for art's sake, regardless of the money. And that has led you to not only one kind of development in that art, but like multiple. Like I could probably count at least 4 if you count the way that you play the drums, which is unique to you and your own expression, and then the involvement that you had with you and Jimmy Lyons, you and Larry Willis, and if I may be so arrogant, the things that we're playing now that are all were different, that were not fueled by the desire to or the ability to make a bunch of money doing it.
Right.
And maybe if we're coming to this point where the skills remain, but there's no longer a monetary mechanism, that the skill, like what you say, okay, well, we have this Morse code, that now what are we going to do with it? Or now we've developed all this intricate astronomy navigation, what are we going to do with it? Maybe that's when it you'll see when there's no longer the requisite, like this professional parameter that's required of it, it will be able to flip out into what it is going to do next. The evolution occurs. Maybe that's part of the explosion that we're in.
I think so. What's next? I don't know. We were talking about it yesterday. What's that's the next big thing, and to lead that and to recognize it, would be great, but we just don't know. Like Matt made a good point, when the fish came out of the water with lungs, we got lungs now, but they didn't think, okay, well, what about birds? They couldn't see that far yet. I mean, it just wasn't there.